Is Johnny Somali the ultimate ugly American? Let's talk about that. Hi, folks. Tony DeWitt again with another video on the law. Remember, I don't dispense legal advice here, and this is what we're talking about today. The term ugly American historically refers to a stereotype of Americans abroad who are perceived as loud, arrogant, ignorant, and disrespectful of local cultures and customs. The stereotype can be traced back to a 1958 novel called The Ugly American by William Lederer and Eugene Burdick. The novel criticized the behavior of some Americans overseas, particularly in their interactions with other cultures. The book depicts the failures of the U.S. diplomatic corps, whose unwillingness to use the local language, dismissal of its culture and its customs, and its refusal to integrate with the local population allowed the more polished abilities of Eastern Bloc diplomats, especially Soviet diplomats, to achieve diplomatic success overseas where Americans could not. Here are some types of the conduct that have been attributed to this perception about Americans overseas. First is the idea of arrogance and entitlement, displaying a sense of superiority and entitlement, often expecting special treatment or services without regard for local customs or norms. I remember being in a shop in Belgium and hearing one of my fellow cruisers from a Princess cruise ask how much something was in real money, meaning the American dollar. That kind of thing tends to tick people off because they certainly think of their money as real money too. Cultural insensitivity, disregarding or mocking local customs, traditions, or languages. In Japan, for instance, the refusal to take off your shoes before entering someone's home to visit. That includes failing to make an effort to understand or respect cultural differences. There are many cultural differences between American life and Japanese or Korean life. Loud and obnoxious behavior, being excessively loud or boisterous in public spaces, often disregarding local social norms about noise and personal behavior, as well as personal space. As soldiers in Korea, we were always told to think of ourselves as diplomats when working outside of our camp. And that's what I tried to do. I think many of us tried to do that. Now, some of us truly were ugly Americans, but those folks got to deal with the military police when they got out of hand. Ignorance of local customs, demonstrating a lack of awareness or respect for local cultural practices such as dress codes, dining etiquette, or religious practices. In fact, many of the early OSS agents that were sent over to be in France and Germany during World War II to spy on the Germans were arrested and caught because of failure to understand the local dining etiquette, among other things. Refusal to learn local languages, expecting locals to speak English and showing frustration or disdain when they didn't. If a barrier arises, instead of being frustrated about it, it's better just to have a little notebook with a few phrases in it that you could run through if you needed help. I'm going to Greece and Turkey here in a few days, and it's a great idea to learn words necessary to communicate essentials. It's also wise to learn the words for police and doctor in those countries as well. You don't need mastery of the language, you only need enough familiarity to get your point across in an emergency and show a little respect for people who may not understand English at all. Another problem, flaunting wealth or material possessions in a way that's perceived as boastful or arrogant or disrespectful to locals can have negative impacts on the way you're viewed in other countries. Walking into a third world church draped in jewels, for example. And although most tourists don't act this way, interfering in local affairs, acting in ways that are seen as meddling in local politics or social issues without a proper understanding or respect for the complexities involved. For example, going into a very Catholic country and advocating for abortion, or those are the kinds of things that really disturb people. These behaviors contribute to the ugly American stereotype by creating negative impressions and reinforcing the notion that some Americans lack respect for other cultures. It's worth noting that this stereotype doesn't apply to all Americans abroad. Many travelers make efforts to engage respectfully and positively with the cultures that they visit. There is a belief, however, on YouTube that drama draws views and views produce income. I get that. But it doesn't mean you have to act like a classless fool. In addition, if you're streaming content worldwide on TikTok or YouTube and you're making money from it, it's possible in a foreign country to run afoul of the laws there where, in order to make money in that country, you have to have the right to work in that country and be taxed in that country. That brings me around to Johnny Somali. Somali is an American streamer, and he became notorious in South Korea for his disruptive and offensive behavior during live streams, which eventually led to a legal action against him, including a travel ban. Now, South Korea is not the only place where he has distinguished himself as being somewhat of a nuisance. He has been kicked out, I believe, of both Israel and Japan. And of course, in both of those instances, he was very disrespectful of the local culture, customs, language, and essentially their entire way of life. Somali was known for harassing locals and making offensive comments and often targeting individuals based on race or nationality. His actions were widely condemned for promoting racial stereotypes and creating public disturbances. For example, knowing that Japan had invaded Korea during World War II, he went to the Kyunghee University and ran around displaying a drawing of the Japanese rising sun flag. Now, that's a symbol that's widely associated with the war and considered blatantly offensive in Korea. I don't imagine there are many successful Japanese restaurants there, I'm just saying. During one of his streams, he mocked the president of Korea. He kissed his photo and then he made an obscene gesture. I love the Korean president. He is a great leader. Thank you for keeping me safe and under police protection, he is reported to have said at some point. That's not the kind of behavior that is going to help your case. And the idea that maybe the police aren't watching social media is probably the kind of arrogant thing that someone would think when he thinks that, well, let's just say he thinks his feces do not have any aroma whatsoever. He has played music with explicit lyrics, rap music with explicit lyrics, and at high volume on the subway, and security warned him and then they booted him from the train. I guess he was unsatisfied that he had not yet managed to draw a police presence, so he played North Korean songs to bus riders. The bus riders didn't appreciate this and confronted them, and when they did, he pretended not to understand and responded with racist words again. I won't say the racist word, but it begins with G and it ends with K. You might call it the G word, and it's considered a slur in Korea. And he told the citizens there to speak English to him as though he had some right to demand that accommodation from them. His live streaming often involved causing disturbances in public places, which drew negative attention and complaints from both locals and authorities. He sparked outrage after he was seen kissing a statue that represented Korean women who were victims of Japanese aggression during World War II. During the era of Japanese occupation of Korea, the Japanese captured some of the local Korean women and made them comfort women. And without explaining further, let's just say they weren't there to fluff up the pillows on the bed. At Shandong History and Culture Park in Seoul, Somali kissed the statue and posed with the statue in ways that would have been completely inappropriate. This would be similar to someone coming to the 9/11 memorial and shooting a video while dressed in a mock explosive vest, for example. These disruptions were seen as disrespectful to the local culture and they contributed to a negative perception of foreigners. Due to his repeated inappropriate behavior, he faced legal actions under South Korean laws that protect public order and prevent harassment. The authorities imposed a travel ban as part of his measures to prevent further disturbances and to hold him accountable for his actions. And by travel ban, what I mean is you're not leaving the country. The travel ban and the legal actions against Somalia reflect South Korea's efforts to maintain public order and address the behavior of individuals who violate local laws and norms, particularly those involving harassment and public disturbances. He's looking at perhaps as long as a 10-year sentence if he is convicted. Now, I know a little something about Korea and the Korean people. From 1977 to 1978, I was in South Korea with the 2nd Infantry Division. I was at Camp Casey, close to the DMZ. It was a time when sabers rattled, and we were never sure if we were going to wake up in the middle of the night to an alert siren. When there was an alert, we all went to the armory, we drew our M16, we grabbed our gas masks, and we went out to our rally point. We had an alert in February one year when the outside temperature was at 17 degrees, and you put the windshield down on your Jeep so you have the full force of the wind blowing you in the face. And you do that in the event that you need to engage aircraft or enemies as you drive. So we were fortunate that this was just an alert and it was just practice, but it was drilled into us day and night that it might come to the point where it wasn't just practice. The memories of the Korean War, which never ended, it just reached an armistice with the cessation of hostilities, and the memories of what happened there were still fresh in the collective memory of the Korean people. Koreans generally, with the exception of those who live in the city, were poor, agrarian, and just wanted to live out their lives in peace. One reason I have no respect whatsoever for Johnny Somali is what he did at Shandong Palacean Park. When I went there and toured the place, there were Korean school children who came up to me and hugged me. One even kissed my hand because they remembered that it was the United States that saved them from communism and totalitarianism. Korean people are a warm and wonderful people. It's a great country to visit if you don't act like a complete and total jerk. Someone like Johnny Somali, with his complete cultural ignorance as well as his historical ignorance, would likely never understand that. And Korean wars are not American wars. In Korea, a man who becomes a butcher, he has a lower social standing than one of the ladies of the evening. And the ladies of the evening are sometimes referred to there as businesswomen in Korea. And they enjoy their own regulations and they get frequent medical visits. But don't make the mistake of thinking that all Korean women work for a living in that way. Disrespect one, and you may find out what Taekwondo really means. In Seoul, when I was there, you could not take your camera above the second floor anywhere because they did not want anyone taking pictures of the city from a high vantage point. Buildings downtown were rumored to have concealed anti aircraft platforms on their roofs, and South Korea might have appreciated that you were an American, but they didn't want you to go up there and take a picture that might get published somewhere and out in the public domain that would reveal the locations of those and where, basically giving the North Koreans, if they attacked, a blueprint of where to attack. It's my understanding that Somali has fans who think he is being unfairly treated. So let me enlighten them about what to do in a foreign country. Before you go, learn the history and learn how to read the room. Don't make an ass out of yourself and obey the law. If you're approached by the police, you act respectfully toward them. When I was in my high school days, someone loaned me a copy of a book called The Insult Dictionary, How to Be Abusive in Five Different Languages. And when you're 16, 17 years old, you think this is the height of humor. So it had phrases in there like, I know you're big enough to take up two bus seats, but you only paid for one. Please move your fat behind over. And that I thought, like I said, was just the funniest thing I'd ever read. But when it came to the point where you were talking to a police officer, the insult dictionary had words like, hello, kind police officer, could you please direct me to? And I thought that was very wise of the person who wrote the book to avoid getting people very upset with him when they wound up in jail in a foreign country. So let me talk a little bit about what you do when you do get arrested if you're in a foreign country. The first thing you do is have them notify the consulate so they can help you. They can often arrange for somebody to get a lawyer for you. Often, in exchange for dropping the charges, the diplomats will take you to the airport personally, put you on a plane, and send you back home. And then the State Department is never going to let you travel back there again. What happened to Somali in Korea is his own fault, and he deserves every bad thing that will happen to him as a result. I do know that there are other YouTubers on here who have talked a great deal about Somali, but I wanted to give a little bit different perspective from someone who has lived there for a year and came to really respect and like the Korean people. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Catch me back here at the beach next time. Thanks for watching my video. If you have a request for me to cover a topic, please send me an email to the address above and in the subject line put video request. If you have comments, drop them in the comments down below. If you found the content worthy, please consider subscribing. Since I started doing this work, I have always asked listeners to consider doing just one kind thing every day to make somebody else smile or make their life better in some way. Please consider doing that. It makes the world a better place. Now, YouTube has some suggestions for other videos of mine you may find interesting.